Good afternoon, everyone. This is Don DeRay, and welcome to Bruce McDowell's ZENworks 2020 overview and new features and upgrade considerations. I'll be your host this afternoon. I want to thank you all for attending. I see that we've got some Wisconsin folks in the house. We've got some folks here local here in Pittsburgh, and some people from out west. So thanks for joining us today. I just wanted to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I'm Don DeRay. I'm the president and CEO of Concensus Technologies. And I am just going to go ahead and let Bruce kind of take over the call and go over the new features in ZENworks 2020 and talk about some upgrade considerations that we're already ready for here at Concensus. And then if you have any questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A. I'll queue them up for Bruce as we go along. So with that, Bruce, it's all to you.
Super. Thank you very much, Don, and good afternoon to all of the time zones and the ships at sea. It's great to have you all here with us today. My name is Bruce McDowell, and I'm having a really hard time grasping the fact that it's been 30 years since the Tally Systems team got together, 30 years coming this May, to found Tally Systems and to continue our work on the first hardware, software, inventory, and asset management tools that we created, and that it's been 15 years since we were acquired by Novell. I've been doing this for too long. I have been working with Concensus longer than just since I joined them in 2017, worked as a consultant for them for quite a while beforehand, and during all of that time have worked on the ZENworks side of things, as well as a variety of other projects for Concensus. For Micro Focus, I do implementations. I also am certified as a Novell instructor. It's still a CNI and an ACNI, and I write and present training classes on behalf of Micro Focus and the ZENworks products that are out there. So a quick reminder of what ZENworks does, the core competencies or the core values for the ZENworks product line, if you will. It helps to manage the lifecycle of all of your endpoints. It helps to secure those endpoints against common vulnerabilities and to protect your company data that lives on those endpoints, and to do it in an identity-centric manner with a single console, a single pane of glass treatment, so that you can take care of everything from one place. That's kind of the core way that things are divided in this presentation. I thank my friends at Micro Focus Partner Enablement for getting me some good materials to work with today, and we will dig right in. I have a bunch of slides that are centered around these three areas. I'm going to be zipping through them fairly briskly, since a lot of good things happened to ZENworks in ZENworks 2020. We'll start by taking a look at the themes for the ZENworks 2020 update. We'll talk a little bit about some important architectural changes that took place with this release, and then we'll take a look at the individual new capabilities that have been brought into ZENworks 2020 with this release. So first, the four major release themes for ZENworks 2020. The big one, and one I'll spend the most time on in terms of an individual new feature, is to deliver a security-focused view of software vulnerabilities and to provide good tracking and remediation capabilities for those vulnerabilities. Then we'll take a look at the improved application lifecycle management tracking, and a whole bunch of new customer ideas that have been implemented. Basically here we're looking at improvements to the core ZENworks functionality, some under the hood, some right out in front, that make ZENworks easier to use. Then a quick stop to take a look at a new fixed disk folder-based encryption feature that has come along to enhance the data protection capabilities of ZENworks. And a last quick stop at reporting, the new Vertica-based reporting out of ZENworks Reporting Server 7.2 with great scaling and performance improvements that come along with that upgrade. Most of the pieces of the ZENworks product family have been updated with ZENworks 2020. The core ZENworks configuration management, endpoint security, patch management, all see major changes. Certainly full disk encryption has a new feature that we'll talk about right at the end, and reporting. Very little left behind or not updated on this round of updates, and we'll look at it from the standpoint of the manage, the secure, and the protect aspects as we go forward with the rest of the presentation. To begin with, three major architectural change areas in ZENworks, looking at the new appliances and installers that come with the ZENworks 2020 update, the change from an embedded or external Sybase database to PostgreSQL, and the new Vertica appliance that is used for CVE tracking in large zones. So first of all, every time that we go through one of these upgrades and we get the new appliances, the appliances are becoming better and better. I remember back when we started having appliances that there was a certain amount of reluctance to think about them. Right now they are so easy, so stable, and the deployment is just so simple and straightforward that it's really hard to recommend working with straight installed software unless there are customer reasons for that. The Postgres database, either embedded or external, scales very, very well, and so most customers can make use of that. The appliances patch easily from within the appliance itself on a scheduled basis. They're just really nice to work with, and it's a common appliance platform, so it's the same appliance interface for ZENworks or ZENworks Reporting Server, for the ZENworks Service Desk, as well as various other applications that are being packaged on appliances by Micro Focus. So it's nice to land on an appliance and know exactly what you're going to do. 2020 is a major upgrade, so not only do we have the appliance migration path, but there is also a media-based installation tool available in case you are on an installation of ZENworks that needs that as an upgrade option. So, to begin with, migrating the Sybase database from any Sybase databases to Postgres. As of ZENworks 2020, we are dropping support for Sybase as a database platform. This has been in transition for a couple of releases under ZENworks 2017. Postgres has been available as an alternative embedded database for a while, and has been supported as both an embedded and an external database for a couple of releases now. And with ZENworks 2020, Sybase is removed from the support matrix. As a result, any customers using Sybase will need to migrate their databases away from Sybase before planning or timing out their upgrade to ZENworks 2020. So the scaling for Postgres is much nicer than it is for Sybase. 5,000 devices supported on embedded Postgres, up to 20,000 devices supported on an external Postgres database server. That puts those right into league with some small Oracle and MSQL shops that I've worked with over time. Being open source and widely used, there's lots of support for it, and it has been a very solid and resilient platform for us to work with for the time that it's been part of the support matrix for ZENworks. There is a standalone database migration utility, which is useful for customers who have the ZENworks appliance or who are looking to stick with ZENworks 2017 for a while. There is also a copy of that migration utility built into the ZENworks upgrade installer on the installation media. The migration can take place to either the embedded or external Postgres databases. If there are any issues with the migration, it's possible to revert back to Sybase very quickly as part of the migration process while you're resolving the issue with the migration to Postgres. And the migration process can be rerun as many times as necessary. It can be picked up in the middle or restarted depending on where you left off. So the entire process end to end of moving off of Sybase and over to Postgres is nice, and it's been very, very well thought out. Once the migration is successful, then you have your choice, depending on what's appropriate for your environment, either to move forward with the rest of the upgrade installer or to migrate to a new ZENworks 2020 appliance. Verdict for ZENworks 2020 is an optional component that helps enable the CVE tracking feature that we'll talk about in a little while, as well as bundle statuses in large enterprise deployments. The ZENworks appliance is now configured with a Vertica and Kafka set of services in order to be able to support large-scale CVE patch tracking, tracker and trending reports that, again, we'll talk about a little bit here. Using Vertica improves dashboard performance and allows for higher scaling than a regular relational DBMS is capable of supporting. Basically, the data in the CVE tracking database has so many components to it that there's something else was needed in order to be able to store that data and to be able to use it efficiently, hence Vertica, which came into the Micro Focus family of products with the HPE merger in 2017. It features a columnar support platform, is very distributed, highly available, and fault tolerant. Depending on the size of your implementation, you set up 1, 3, 5, or more appliances to handle the Vertica data. It is certainly set up to handle large volumes of data in that way and allows for very fast performance to access that data. It works in conjunction with the Apache Kafka tool set to provide a unified, high throughput, low latency platform for handling real-time data feeds. And that data feed is the CVE data coming in for patching analysis. As noted, the services for both Vertica and Kafka run on a specially configured ZENworks appliance. You take a regular off-the-shelf ZENworks appliance, and then you get into command line mode and you run a series of commands to set up the services for both of these, and that distinguishes that particular appliance as a Vertica appliance, which is then joined into the ZENworks zone for that data set. So that's the end of the infrastructure discussion. Now we move into the different capability updates that have taken place in ZENworks 2020. Lots of little buttons here and lots of pretty colors, and we're going to try to touch on every one of them for at least a moment. Some of them a little bit longer along the secure part at the top. We'll spend more time there. We will touch on every other one of the ones at least for a moment so that you get a good feel for everything which has been added into ZENworks in 2020. So on the secure side, we want to deliver a security-focused view of software vulnerabilities that provide powerful tracking and remediation capabilities. This comes along with changes in a number of different areas, and we'll start right in with a consolidation of all of the security-based features of ZENworks on one landing page. So you may remember that there used to be an endpoint security or a full disk encryption tab along the main menu side and a patch management side. Now we have the security page, and everything that used to be on all those other pages has now been consolidated in one place. The security dashboard is the default landing page, but the patch dashboard, patch policies, and patches tabs are just the same as we had in ZENworks Patch Management, the ZENworks Patch Management setup in ZENworks 2017. It all starts with a getting started page that includes links to everything that is security related, as well as links to a series of introductory videos to guide you through setting up all of the security features. There are plenty of dashboards, some familiar, some brand new. All of your patch management features, all of your full disk encryption, all of your endpoint security, all in one easy starting place for you to work with. Lots of dashboards and dashlets, the ability to create your own dashboards and dashlets. Those features continue to expand as we move forward. And then the big new feature, the vulnerability-based view and approach to remediation. We'll talk about this for a little while here. So the great security challenge that we have, and Concensus spends a lot of time looking at the security of your computing environment, and this meshes nicely into one of the big features for ZENworks 2020. How do I know what software vulnerabilities are out there? How do I know what software vulnerabilities apply to my individual devices? And how do I get rid of those vulnerabilities? How do I remediate everything? So we add with ZENworks 2020 access to a new set of data, the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures Database, or CVEs. So as new potential security vulnerabilities discovered in the wild, they are processed through the CVE numbering authority and given an ID and a description which sets them apart uniquely against all of the other nasties that are out there. They're added to a master list at cve.miter.org and made available through the National Vulnerabilities Database, which imports information about all of these, adds severity scores, fix information, and all sorts of other metadata to the mix. Not all CVEs are security-related software flaws. Some are from some misconfigurations and some other ideas, some other issues. But this is a big database, and as we'll see, this is where Vertica comes into play for all of this. So how does ZENworks identify software vulnerabilities? So right now, with ZENworks 2020, ZENworks pulls data from two different sources: the CVE data in the NVD and patches from the patch content repository. This is the same, if you will, regular patch repository that we've used with ZENworks Patch Management for many years. Each patch coming from their patch repository includes a list of the CVEs that are applied to it. These patches are then mapped to the CVEs so that we can look at it either from the standpoint of which CVE is going to be fixed by this patch, or which CVEs are going to be corrected by applying this patch. We can look at it from two different directions. And then you take a look at the individual device and figure out, whether the device is vulnerable. If all of the CVEs and all of the patches that apply to a particular device are installed on that device, then that device is fully patched and has no vulnerabilities. If they're not installed, then there is vulnerability there that can be reported on and can be addressed in ZENworks. So there are a number of built-in dashlets that come along on the security dashboard once everything is set up with the CVE database, which is something that you subscribe to in the same way that you subscribe to other things in ZENworks. So the CVE Severity Dashlet will show you all of the CVEs that are applicable in your environment to any device, similar to the concept of applicable patches on the ZENworks patch management side of things. Excuse me. The top CVEs dashlet shows applicable CVEs that are listed by the number of vulnerable devices, most recently released, and highest severities. So we'll start taking a look at the data in a number of different ways as it pulls in through some of the dashlets and they're drilling down into those dashlets. When you expand, for example, the CVE Severity Distribution dashlet, it shows you all of the CVEs that are being covered in your environment. It shows the number of vulnerable devices. It shows what platform that that particular CVE applies to, the vendor that it comes from, when it was released, and a variety of other information. You can change the filtering on this to suit your needs, and you can save your customized dashlet view so that you can come back to it over and over again. The CVE Severity Distribution dashlet and the top CVEs and top 5 CVE dashlets are built in and shipped with ZENworks 2020, and they're ideal for taking a look at the overall status of vulnerabilities in your environment. You may also create your own CVE tracker dashlets to focus on a single vulnerability or a group of related vulnerabilities, and then have those sitting on the security dashboard page so that you can track individual remediation projects that you were working on for a particular period of time. So when you start looking at some of this data in the individual dashlets, you can take a look at excuse me, the number of vulnerable devices that you have out there. So drilling down into the dashlets can show you the device, not only the CVEs that are there, but also the individual devices that are impacted by those CVEs. You can drill into an individual CVE and see the list of vulnerable devices that are associated with that. For each device, you can see which patches need to be applied to it and whether any patches have been assigned or not assigned to that particular device. And you can keep track of the individual status for the devices. So if you look at the longer screenshot along the bottom, you can tell whether or not individual assignments have been made to for patches to be assigned to a particular device to remediate some of these CVEs. Looking at the CVE tracker dashlet, you can create these on an ad hoc basis for individual CVEs or groups as necessary, or for individual patches that you want to take a look at. And these, again, will show you the current vulnerability status for a group of devices, as well as the vulnerability trend over time. Am I getting better? Is my vulnerability increasing or decreasing over a period of time? Different ways to mitigate your vulnerabilities. We've had automated patch policies for several releases now. Not a lot of change in terms of their functionality right now. We already have CVE-based filtering available. This is not to say that these are not great features. I use them to keep my environment in my lab patched all the time, and rarely find it necessary to go in and patch on a manual basis or an on-demand basis for my 20 or 30 mostly virtual devices that I maintain. But then sometimes, as good as the automation is, you just need to jump on a real-time issue. So there is on-demand patching available, as there has always been, which is ideal for mitigating things that just pop up and need to be attended to quickly, such as WannaCry from 2017, or the more recent Wormable Remote Desktop Services vulnerability. And there's the individual CVE for listing for that one. So if you're going to work with mitigation via on-demand patching, you can do this directly from the CVE tracker dashlet. In the dashlet, you find the vulnerable devices or devices that you want. Select them, deploy remediation from the menu to launch a very familiar wizard that lets you deploy patches based on their encapsulated CVEs directly to the selected devices. Simple, straightforward, and with lots of nice feedback as to the progress of how things have been patched. You can patch immediately or schedule a time. If you've worked with patch management, this all sounds very familiar, and indeed it is a very familiar process. And after the patch has been installed, the vulnerability status will automatically be updated and reflected in the tracker dashlet, as well as in other places in the management console. So very, very easy to deploy the patches, very, very easy to track the progress of those deployments and know when you have completely mitigated the problem that you are addressing that particular day. You can also go to several other places. You can start at the CVE Severity Distribution dashlet, select a particular CVE and deploy patches directly to all vulnerable devices. You can go to the top CVEs or top 5 CVEs dashlet, pick a particular CVE and go through the same process, or you can go into an individual CVE, find any patches that need to be applied, and apply them from there. So as with any good piece of software, there are lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing from different places, depending on exactly what your particular scope or context is for working on something that day. This is something I really like in the new ZENworks 2020, and this is on the patch management, as much on the patch management side as on the CVE side. I've done a bunch of ZENworks patch management projects over time, and the screenshot here is looking at one individual patch for Adobe Flash Player and telling you everything there is to know about it, from the impact and whether or not it's been downloaded and cached and ready for distribution. It's complete description. It also shows you all of the CVEs that are addressed by this particular patch and gives you a full listing of all of the superseded versions of this patch that have come in the past. So I've got everything that I need to know about this patch all in one place. There's also a relationships tab that tells me the patch status for individual devices on this. And when I go out to the devices, it gives me more information about the current status of the distribution of this patch, including how it's been assigned. The assignments can include a patch policy or an individual patch deployment bundle which has been built, whether or not and when the patch has been installed and who it was installed by. If it was installed by a ZENworks process, you'll see it recorded as by ZENworks. For things that I see like Chrome updates, we have lots of Chrome here in the family. When those get updated just by someone running Chrome and it updating itself organically, doesn't show it being installed by ZENworks, but it does show that the update has been applied, and that counts towards the overall remediation and distribution of that patch. So I'm really quite pleased with this new new page that describes all of the information about the status of an individual patch. You can also go down and take a look at information on the patches tab for individual devices and get similar feedback. So now we see on the patches page all of the patches that have been assigned to this particular device. We show where the assignments come from, whether it's a bundle or whether it's a policy, when the patch was released, when it was installed, who it was installed by, everything that we had before, plus a little bit more. Plus, down at the bottom of the page, assigned patch policies and assigned remediation deployments for this individual device. So I don't have to remember, oh, does this device have a particular patch policy assigned to it? It's listed out right there on the screen with everything else. So a very nice one-stop shopping presentation of everything having to do with patching on a particular device. New feature, I think this was this came from a customer idea, but it's been in the work for a little while, and it has now arrived, the ability to patch on shutdown. It's implemented by pushing out a Windows shutdown script that is added to assigned machines so that it attempts to apply patches when the machine is shut down. This is a nice feature. You know, where you have an environment where the end user is shutting their machine down on a regular basis, you don't necessarily want to have to figure out how to restart the device in the middle of the night in order to apply patches, because Wake on LAN is not universally deployed and accepted by a lot of companies that I've worked with. And B, doing it in the middle of the day, that's just makes end users unhappy. So if you can apply the patch when the device shuts down at the end of the day, if users are asked to shut their machines down on a daily basis, you get the patch in at the end of the day, they start it back up in the morning, you've accomplished your reboot, and you've had your patch applied without interrupting the end user. And doing this is as simple as a new radio button on the patch schedule enforcement page or part of the wizard, where you just select do it on shutdown. So very nice, very simple. New change for portable device storage control. Lots of devices are coming through now and being recognized or enumerated in ZENworks as Windows portable devices, or WPDs. These include mobile phones, tablets, cameras, more and more devices all the time coming through like this. Previous versions did not necessarily recognize those devices nor allow for control of these devices. We've now added the ability to provide some read-write access, read-only access, and no access, and to control storage access without interfering with the ability of those devices to charge or anything else. So some improved capability going on right there. All right, that's the end of our security area. Now we go into changes to the overall management features in ZENworks. Lots of little items here to talk about. We'll jump through these relatively quickly, but spend a little bit of time on each. So, bundle status enhancements. Lots of changes here. Many of them have been asked for through user ideas over time. The real bottom line for what's going on here is that a lot of new data has been added about the status of bundle deployments. This data is more granular and more accurate than it ever has been before, and the ability to report on that data has been enhanced through dashlets and reporting capabilities in ZENworks Reporting Server. So we'll talk about some of the individual changes going on here, but basically you're seeing, you know, the various steps and stages during a bundle, the different actions during action sets individually being broken out so that you can see where you are. If you're sitting in front of a machine diagnosing the installation of a bundle, you can see the steps that the bundle is going through. You can see where something stops and where you need to go in and diagnose what stopped at that particular point, and get more feedback on that. You get version information about what's going on inside of bundles that feeds back better, so that if you are running with multiple versions of bundles, you can differentiate them more easily. When you're trying to diagnose things, just generally more information, easier to access information about bundle statuses. A new bundle dashboard tab on the individual bundle page, with a number of dashlets that you can create and configure for your own purposes, that tell you what's going on visually in terms of things like the number of devices that this has been assigned to, and where the assignment status is on those devices, distribution, installation status, launch status, all of the statuses that you've seen before, now graphically represented in dashlet view. And of course, with dashlets, you can drill down into them and see what's going on. So if, for example, you select the either the using device or user assignment dashlets, you can drill down into those individually, and you can see and you can see the devices, individual devices that are applicable to that bundle, and find out what their status is on a granular level for that. With the distribution, install, and launch dashlets, you can see where in the process of bundles getting pushed out and applied on devices everything lies. And with the, you can also have lots of flexibility to configure how these dashlets will work for you. Lots of different columns that you can apply to the status details, so that you can get exactly the view on this data in which you're interested. Here's a feature that a lot of customers have asked for a long time: the ability to automatically clean up older bundle and policy versions as a configuration setting. So there's a new setting that's available either at the zone or the individual bundle level to save a certain number of older versions of bundles, and versions older than that get automatically cleaned up, giving you the ability to save on storage and to generally keep a nice, clean, and tidy zone. About the only place right now that this is not implemented is for patch policies, which are bundles by everything other than their name, and I look forward to those being added to this feature at some point in the future. Another customer idea, the ability to pin favorites in the ZENworks application, or ZAPP. So now you can just go, and users can do this, administrators can do this. Anything which is pinned as a favorite has a little star associated with it on the icon in the ZENworks application so that it can be readily identified. Nice, simple, make user life a little bit easier. Enhanced bundle progress activities. So we can see the name of an action being executed, information about child bundle execution, an enhanced progress indicator that actually works, plus a display of the bundle icon. Here's an example. I've had a chance to work with this on building some bundles, and it's really nice seeing exactly where you are in the process of the deployment or the installation of something, especially if you're still in the development phase and you need to figure out exactly where your next testing or your next tweak needs to take place to get everything to work. An install executable action. I think when this was announced, even though I wasn't online, I could hear the cheers. Basically, with this one, it's a new action. So instead, if you have an executable to install a piece of software, instead of having to store that executable in cache, push it down to the individual device, execute it, and then remove the executable from the device at the end because you don't want to leave the installers lying around cluttering up the hard disk. You still have to add the file to cache, but then you can just execute it directly. So much more efficient for executable-based installations going forward. Deploying iOS updates. We now have the ability to identify iOS devices that have an OS update available and that have the necessary space for installation, and to push those updates down by way of a new bundle type. This is limited to supervised devices, and those devices should not have a passcode and should have a sufficient charge. You know from updating your iPhones that you have to work your way through the passcode in order to get the update to go down. So, you know, that's one thing that's going to block things, and you never want to run out of battery when you're working on those things. But it's nice to be able to do this in an automated fashion, and to be able to baseline all of your iOS-based devices at a single iOS version and keep everything consistent in your environment. Several other Mac management changes. The Mac agent deployment process has been simplified. I know that Apple has always sort of had a Mac sort of way of doing things, and the old way of doing it for installing the ZENworks agent just wasn't Macintosh enough. So this has now been simplified with ZENworks 2020 by bundling up the installer as a regular package file that can be simply double-clicked to start the installation. Nice, easy, the way that people expect things to work. And on the imaging side of things, there is now support for MacNet Boot. A number of capabilities supported. This also ended up with some changes in both the Novell Proxy DHCP service and the Novell TFTP service to support everything that was going on under the hood there, but more support for Macintoshes brought in with ZENworks 2020. We have an experimental bit of technology that has been pulled in for working with Windows device mobile device management, Windows 10 variant. And right now what we're doing is allowing for limited device management with both the ZENworks agent and the, as well as the MDM agent. This is moving in a direction that will be able to do more incoming releases. So right now you can do device enrollment on an experimental basis, both with and without the ZENworks agent. Tentatively planned for update 1, and heavy emphasis, of course, on tentatively. We are expecting to see some other things coming along in this area. A few other improvements on the general ZENworks core capability side: a new remote management viewer, a new version of Tight VNC with much improved performance. Support for Windows 1903, iOS 13, and Android 10, the never-ending battle to try to keep up with the latest operating system variant coming out from the various vendors. WinPE-based imaging is now as fast or faster than the traditional, air quotes, Tuxera Linux-based imaging. And I've been working with WinPE imaging for a bit now, and it's quite nice for the customers with whom I've worked with it. And a new ZMan command to initiate certificate validation when reminting server or CA certificates. Overall, certificate management process continues to get much better and much smoother over time. Back far enough to when it was a series of really, really long, really uncomfortable, hard to type in command line things to buttons that we can now type very quickly and easily. It's much improved. I thank you for your patience with the occasional pauses while I cough and drink a little bit of tea to keep my vocal cords working this week. A quick stop on the protect side of things. We added folder-based encryption to the mix with the rest of the full disk encryption that we have going on. So for individual folders on NTFS fixed disks, using the Microsoft Windows encrypting file system. So this is a nice enhancement to the style of encryption that we had available with FDE before. So we can work down to individual folders, give administrators the option to specify certain folders as shared, others as private, with user-created folders always being listed as private. Administrators can have access to encrypted folders via policy-defined password. But generally an extra level of granularity. You don't have to encrypt the entire drive. Now we can just encrypt parts of it to make things more secure but easier to manage. And we're working with native Windows technology, so no additional drivers are needed in order to be able to work with everything here. Finally, one last set of updates on the Analyze side to ZENworks Reporting 7.2, product that is near and dear to my heart, having written training for it and worked with ZENworks Reporting since its earliest days. An upgrade to the newest Jaspersoft engine version 7.2. Every single update seems to make the overall engine, both performance and ease of use, move forward nicely. We've added mobile inventory data to the existing domains. So now that there's full hardware and software inventory for mobile devices, we can report on it, which is great. The bundles and ZENworks domains have been updated with the new bundle status and patch information that we discussed all through the rest of this presentation. And there is support for new domains based on the Vertica database for bundles and patch management information that is being stored in Vertica. Support for the Sybase database has been removed. That would seem self-evident. And we've also greatly improved performance in a number of different areas. A couple of quick considerations with regard to product support matrices and upgrades. If you are still running on ZENworks 11, the committed support for that product expired going on a year and a half ago. And so we're at a point right now where upgrades are becoming, well, they may not be any more challenging going forward, but they're already interesting enough. I've got one scoped out that we're getting ready to start right now from 11.3.1 up to ZENworks 2020. And that one has, if I recall the statement of work correctly, 3 individual stops that call for a 1 to 2 week pause while we wait for managed agents in the environment to assimilate new changes that we have made through the addition of servers or moving the certificate authority and things like that. So it's taking lots of steps to get from ZENworks 11 on forward, plus the software is not supported anymore. Plus we run into more and more circumstances where infrastructure on which ZENworks is running is no longer supported. So versions of Windows have fallen off the support matrix, versions of databases have fallen off the support matrix. So now's the time to talk to us at Concensus about a ZENworks upgrade, especially if you're on ZENworks 11. For ZENworks 2017, still on committed support through the end of October of this year, but that means that the clock is counting before that goes to a lower level of support. As noted earlier, if you're running the Sybase database, we have to do that migration, and that does imply the recommendation is move the database from Sybase to Postgres, and then wait 2 weeks to let everything just run in the background. Make sure that everything is happy before you move on to the next steps. So. What can Concensus do for you along these lines? Well, we would love to help you manage your ZENworks service, your ZENworks as a service, and for you never to have to worry about an upgrade or a patch again, because we can manage them for you. I'm doing this for a couple of customers right now, as well as providing weekly health checks. We use your environment. We find out when your schedule is willing to accommodate any interruptions that patching might require. And we provide the resource to get the work done, be it during regular business hours or off hours, whatever it takes. We're also pleased to provide assistance with application packaging or any other tasks that ZENworks features. We can do things on site, we can do things off site. I'm very happy to come on site and work on installations, upgrade, in-person training, and consulting on best practices. And we provide remote support on a pay-as-you-go basis. Concensus also supports add-on products for your ZENworks environment. The most excellent ENGELI imaging toolkit that accelerates work with device-independent imaging using either the traditional ZENworks or WinPE engines, and excellent driver management. Also, the Liquid Setup Commander, used to be called Bundle Commander, now called Setup Commander, that speeds the creation of application packages, especially for repeated updates. It has a direct integration to ZENworks and a setup store that supports many of the major software manufacturers, and it has regular updates that come along to make software packaging easier and easier. That's what I have to say. Do we have any questions, Don?
Yes, we have a couple things. And please type them in here. I do have the question and answer session open. But Matt from Wisconsin just actually said that if you're using a external Postgres database, he suggests using SLES 12, not SLES 15, because then 2020 needs Postgres 11, which is not yet supported on SLES 15. And then he asked, is there an ETA when that will happen? I don't know that we have an answer for that, though.
Don't have an answer on that, although I've been talking with Matt and going back and forth with engineering on that as well. Matt is one of those wonderful customers who got a little bit ahead of the game in terms of his version of SLES. I don't have an answer for you yet, Matt, but our friend Arvind is looking into that, and hopefully we'll hear something back here in the next little bit.
Okay. And then our friend from Pittsburgh, Brian, is asking, is there a better way to customize the Windows 10 Start menu in 2020?
This is a question that I have had from a couple of customers right now, and I haven't landed on an answer that I like yet, but it is prominently featured on my to-do list, trying to figure out how to deal with all of the little applications that come with Windows 10. I know that as part of ENGL imaging, there is the capability to decide which of those included, or what's the word I'm looking for, injected apps, the ones that nobody wants. As well as a few that we do. There's a panel there where it lists all of those apps and gives you the ability to decide which one that you're going to deploy as part of a newly imaged machine and which not. Which not to deploy. That works really well. So I know how to do it there. Doing it in, configuring it natively through ZENworks, I'm working on that.
All right, I do not have any more questions in the queue right now, so if we'll probably stick around for another 30 seconds, see if anybody puts anything in there. Otherwise, tell us a favorite story, Bruce.
Yeah, for sure. If you have any questions that come to mind afterwards, make note of my email address, bruce.mcdowell@consensus.com. Drop me a note. I am sort of putting together, as some of you saw in an email from earlier this week, an informal mailing list of ZENworks customers at Consensus that I might drop occasional alerts and things like that on. So if that's of interest to you, please correspond with me on that. And otherwise, would love to talk to you about your ZENworks environment and see what we can do to help you with that.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention, Bruce. Consensus as the roadmap is evolving for ZENworks. Some of the things that we're starting to see as a service is everything's being as a service. Since we've been doing hosting here, mostly for identity and access management customers and some small business customers that we're hosting here at Consensus at our data center, we're starting to see ZENworks kind of move towards as a service model. So as the product starts to evolve, you're going to see things from us in terms of hosting capabilities. We would love to host ZENworks for customers today, and we've actually been asked by Micro Focus to do that. The product isn't quite there yet for hosting purposes. We're hoping that in the next year and a half or so, those things will start to show up in the ZENworks portfolio. We can host it today, but it involves some VPNs, and there's obviously your imaging and your satellite boxes and things like that need to be local, especially if you're doing imaging. But if you're just wanting to do device management and things like that, it is possible to actually host that. So if anybody's interested in kind of offloading ZENworks as a service, so to speak, right now we can certainly support it in your environment and are willing to give it a go in our hosted environment. So if anybody has any questions on that as well. By the way, the video for this will be put up on our blog, so there'll be a link to for this, and if anybody wants to share that on social media, that'd be great. We're trying to get the word out. Micro Focus is already going to be putting a link out on their social media. So we appreciate your time and appreciate you guys being customers of Consensus. So have yourselves a great day.
Thank you very much.